Hi guys. Okay, I just got the all this oh gosh, ink done. All the edging done. Here, here, and on all the stencils with the crackle paste. So I decided to switch out the one that was unraveling. This one is okay. You know, I'm not going to have an unraveling one in there. Alright, as you know, with all the rivets, is make your hole punch. Stick the rivet in there. Rivet. Rivet. And you take that guy, you take the little pointy end, you stick it under, and you smush it together. Ta-da! And this particular rivet set is listed on my Amazon links. I do have the crapodile. I have the crapodile, but the crapodile is only for emergency use only. It's emergency use only. Trust me. It's pain. These guys are much more friendly. This will be, well, let's see. What should we call these guys? Sam and Ted. Ted. And Sam. Here we go. Sam and Ted kick butt. They're listed on Amazon links. Okay. I'm going to go through. Well, here, I'll show you how I did this one. So, I had an ex-boyfriend named Sam. Oh, that guy was, wow. His name was Samuel. He did not like to be called Sam at all. And he didn't like Samuel at all. So he wanted to be called Mule. And that's what he was called, was Mule. He was my first real boyfriend when I was 19. And he was 26. I was working up in Yellowstone for the summer, which was incredible. And if your kids, or you, get a chance to go do it, go do it. Go wait tables up there. I'm going to pull you up here just a little bit so that you have a better view. Sorry about that. So Samuel. Whoa. What a jerk he was. I didn't know it. You know, I was young and in love, and he was the first guy who really ever paid attention to me, because I was truly this very tall, awkward. I'm 5'11", and in Wyoming people are very short for some reason. I think in California I would have had a much easier time growing up. So I didn't have any boyfriends in high school. I didn't even have anybody that, you know, liked me or was interested in me or whatever. And I think I had a couple dates. I wasn't ever asked to a dance or anything like that. So, you know, Mule was my first real boyfriend. And he was just kind of a whack job, though. And he wasn't really very good for me in a lot of ways. God. We ended up kind of moving in together up at Yellowstone. I moved into his room with him because he didn't have a roommate. And, you know, I just thought he was so cool. And he would let me use his car, and I didn't have a car to use. And then he went with me to go pick up my first vehicle, which was a 1970 VW bus that I painted. I painted my bus, and it was so cool. It had a sun in front, a moon in the back, and it had fall on one side and spring on the other, and it was all spray painted. This VW bus. When I get home from my first summer there at Yellowstone, my mother looks at me and she says, "You're not parking that in front of the house." I said, "Well, yeah." She said, "No, I mean, you're not parking that in front of the house." Oh. Where am I supposed to park? Just not in front of the house. Like, okay, thanks. So Mule was up in Yellowstone for another couple weeks, closing out the season. He was a cook, and I was a waitress up there. And started out as a busboy. Oh, what a miserable job that was. But had some of the most amazing hiking trips with groups of people. Before I met him, I actually had met up with a group of people that had the same days off as you ended up going hiking with. And I was playing music at the bar on every Monday night, the employee bar. They had an open mic night, and that was cool. Kind of got my own little following while I was there. But all that kind of changed when I started dating this guy, and so, I was just so head over heels with him. And then he's like, "Well, I need to go down to Arizona, Phoenix, and go and get my stuff. And do you want to come with me?" And I'm like, "Ooh, well, okay. I guess I'll go to Arizona. Are we gonna have enough money? Da-da-da-da-da. Oh yeah, we'll be fine. And I didn't have a job, this couple week interim, and he's telling me that he's got plenty of money, and I'm like, oh, okay. So we get down to, he comes from Yellowstone to Casper, and he meets my family. My dad, who didn't approve of pretty much so anything, but no father would have approved of this guy. Had dinner together that night with the family, and he's the type that will fart at the kitchen table. And this was just not acceptable, and he just laughed it off, so I just kind of giggled too. I was like, "Oh, body natural, da-da-da-da-da." Refused to buy my younger brother beer. I couldn't go buy Eric beer, but, so he didn't make a good impression, we'll put it that way. Made a very, very bad impression very quickly. And then it didn't help the fact that I had been fighting with my dad, and I ended up, I had built this bed in my van, and we were going to go off to Phoenix together for the next, couple weeks, and I had just lived with the guy for a couple of months, or at least a month or so. So, it's just like, oh, I didn't want to go back to the house. And so I go back to the house the next morning, and my dad just was like, "Just don't bother to come home for Christmas." Oh. Okay. Wow. All right. Okay. This was a guy that I had been already living with. I didn't realize that I would get, kicked out of the family festivities for Christmas because it, but I did. That's what I was told. And, Anyway, so I go tooling off to, Arizona with this jerk. And I go into the gas station, and I go and pick out some, traveling things, chips or whatever. And he's like, "Well, you probably shouldn't be spending that much money." I'm like, "Well, why? What do you mean?" And he had his car, and we were taking my van down. And they're like, well, you know, we got to make sure we have enough money for gas. I'm like, well, how much money do you have? And, you know, this was in, let's see, I was 19, so it would have been 89. And he had under $100 with him. And I had maybe $100 at the most. And we're trying to get 2 piece of crap vehicles down to Phoenix from Wyoming. And that was a horrible trip. Horrible, horrible trip. And remember, this was just going to last 2 weeks. We were just going to go down, pick up his stuff, and come back. And then he was going to go and work the winter in Wyoming. So this was fall. This was right after the park had closed. So that would have been September, October maybe. And we get down to Phoenix, we have about 25 cents. Truly, we have 25 cents. And we go and stay at his grandma's place. And she was a very, very cool woman. She was very sweet. We put up I think an air mattress or some sort of, you know, pallet in her living room. Crashed there for the night. She gave him a couple bucks. And so I'm like, okay, if we're going to be here for 2 weeks, we don't have any money to get home. You know, this was my first mistake of ever kind of blindly trusting somebody that what they said was going to be, it was going to be. And, God. You know, so, the engine on my van blows up. And his car is also a piece of crap. So we decide to fix the van, but in the meantime, we have to go get jobs. And so we go and start to work for a temp agency. And, you know, that was actually okay, working for the temp agency. And, but he would take my paychecks. And then he wouldn't let me, you know, buy a hamburger at McDonald's. You know, they were $1 or under $1. He wouldn't let me buy anything extra. He would barely feed me, but then he could go and get his, you know, huge Coca-Colas, and, you know, we both smoked back then. Yeah, so he could get his big gulps, but I couldn't even get actual food. And he was taking my paycheck. So, you know, he decided he was going to fix my van. He was going to rebuild the engine in the van. So we get up enough money to go and buy a VW engine. And VWs really are user-friendly. You can, you know, pull out the engine with 3 bolts. I learned a lot about engines, truly, from this experience when I was 19. And, let's see here. I think we want this as far there as we can get it. So he's rebuilding this engine, and he's got it all together. He's buying all the parts, and then he's like, "Ooh, I'm going to soup up the engine. I'm going to get this cam instead of that cam." I'm like, why are you souping up the engine? Just get the parts. Just get the cheapest parts possible. And, you know, he's going to make this hot rod VW bus. And, well, the first engine, I think, had a crack in it, and so that didn't work. So then we had to go back and buy, or exchange it for a second engine. And when we go back to exchange it for the second engine, he gets through, and he's secretly gone and bought these, you know, cams that are, you know, fancy schmancy. He spent the extra money behind my back. Well, he wasn't feeding me, but he could take the money to go do with what he wanted to. And so so he's putting the gaskets. And by now, we stayed at his Aunt Irene's for a while, and she was super sweet, but then she kicked us out. We ended up being in Phoenix for 3 months. So after she kicked us out, we went and stayed at his dad's place. And his dad's place, the ceiling had actually fallen in. And we were sleeping again on that air mattress in the middle of this living room with a collapsed ceiling. And you know, it's like this guy had coffee mugs in his cupboard that were dirty. I mean, it was just like, I met him once. He was a trucker. And it's like, wow. So we rebuilt this engine inside his house in February. No, let's see. It would have been November. Yeah, because it was, I remember calling home on Thanksgiving and having my dad say, well, you know, everybody's here but one. I'm like, oh, who? He's like, well, you. I'm like, oh, you don't want me there. But, let's see. I'm skipping around a lot. Hopefully you're following the story. So the second engine rebuild, he had just spent a ton of money on. And he's putting the gasket, the liquid gasket together to seal this engine together. And as he's doing it, well, after he's actually put it together, and we've spent a lot of money to get these parts, you know, to get the case, to get everything. And he's like, after it's together, I don't know if I should have put gasket sealant over those particular holes. That might not have been the right thing to do. And I'm like, well, let's take it apart and fix it. He's like, oh, no, let's get it installed and let's go check it out and see what happens. Well, of course, he seizes the engine. So then we have to go through the process again of earning more money to go buy another case and buy all new cams, of course, because, you know, when you overheat it, it burns everything up, and, you know, have to come up with another $400 or $500. I'm stuck in Phoenix for 3 months. And, my nephew, Skylar, so finally we get the, van moving. Finally, it's fixed. A third or fourth time. We finally got it going. And, of course, he's got to go start the winter season up in Yellowstone. I think he's already put it off a little bit. He's going to go work up at Old Faithful. And I didn't want to work up in Yellowstone for the winter. But, so we start driving home, and it's in the middle of a blizzard. So if you've ever driven in a VW van, you know that the engine's in the back of the van, and that the heat travels from the back of the van through pipes up to the front of the van. And so basically the heater didn't work. And Mule was also the type of guy who insisted on driving at night. He didn't like to drive during the day. Well, I don't drive during the night because I can't see very well. I'm tired, whatever. So he's driving, and, you know, I'm just like freezing. I'm freezing. It was a horrible blizzard we're driving through. He insisted that we do this. Oh, he also, this was the last year that Grateful Dead, that Jerry Garcia was alive. He refused to let me go to a Grateful Dead concert. And that was like my dream, was to go to an actual Grateful Dead concert and see him play. And he refused to give me enough money to go do it. And then Jerry Garcia died the next year. Next summer. Or no, while we were, while we were up in Yellowstone for that winter. So he died like a month or two later. He refused to let me go. He didn't want to go, so it's nothing he was going to let me do. And so let's see, where are we at? The blizzard getting home. So it was brutally cold. I think it was maybe, you know, it was below zero for sure. And driving in that car, the defroster didn't work, so we kept having to scrape off a little hole. He insisted on driving at night. I'm like, why don't we just stop and you can drive in the morning? You know, we can sleep in the dang bus. It's not like we had to go get a hotel room. She's like, no, I've got to get there. I was like, oh, God, piece of shit. You know? So I'm like, I have to go lay down. So I go lay down, and I finally kind of get curled up, and he pulls over, and he stops, and he comes back, and he wakes me up. He's like, you have to get up. You have to get up with me. You have to come drive with me. I'm like, I want to sleep. I have to sleep. No, you need to drive with me. You need to keep me awake. Fucker. I didn't say that. Anyway. So we get back to Casper, finally, and he has to leave the next morning because he's got to get up to Yellowstone to check in for work. And I'm just honestly so relieved. Oh, of course. Oh, the glue melts that stuff off of there, so we'll have to fix that. So he goes up to Yellowstone. And frankly, he takes my vehicle. He takes my van. And he's got it loaded full of all of his things. His records, his, you know. It's like he should have just put it in a storage unit is what he should have done with it. I don't even remember where it was at. Actually, we picked it up out of a storage unit. I don't know why he had to have it with him. But he goes up to Yellowstone. And I'm frankly quite relieved to be home and be out of that situation. Well, then he ends up calling me just a couple days later and says, Steph, there's a dishwashing job open. Come on up. I'm like, I do not want to go to 8,000 feet in the middle of winter and wash dishes. I don't want to do it. Come up, Steph, come up. And I did. So I go up to Yellowstone. First I have to, find a pair of old cross-country skis because in Yellowstone at Old Faithful Lodge, which is where we were working, in order to get from the dorms where you sleep to the food and where you work is about a mile cross-country ski drive. Right. You have to cross-country ski to get to work every morning or to get to food every morning from your dorms. Past Buffalo. Past Buffalo. You have to drive past, or ski past, you have to watch out because the buffalo liked the trail because it was more packed down and it was easier for them to get to and for them to get to food underneath. So sometimes the buffalo would be sitting right on there. And, you'd be going to work your breakfast shift washing frickin' dishes. What a miserable job that was. Oh, God. Horrible job. And, I get up into the room, and he has the two beds pushed together, and he has every single bit of the room full of all of his stuff. From his records to his posters to his everything. He has made this place 100% his. And I'm supposed to live there for the next 3 months with this jerk. And, I did. Doing a job I hated, being in a place that I didn't like very much. You know, I didn't want to be there. I'm not a winter person. I don't love winter time. I don't, you know, find great joy in skiing. You know, I'd probably do better with it now than I did then. I hated it. I hated it there. And, well, that was a tough year. So I spent, but then there was another girl that worked there who was kind of like, became my arch enemy. She was a waitress, so she didn't think that there was any problem with people throwing the silverware and splashing me with the dirty, crappy water. And, you know, I'm just supposed to take it because I'm just the dishwasher and they're the special people. She was a piece of crap person. You know, and there was good people there, don't get me wrong, but, you know, when you make an enemy, and then she's wait staff, and then it's the wait staff against the dishwashers, and then it's just stupid drama, you know. And then it ended up, I got in a fight with her, and she's just coming after me full force, and I basically just kind of lifted her up and held her up. It's one of the few times I've ever been in a fight. I didn't hit her. Didn't hit her once. I just kind of elevated her. And, yeah, that was fun. Of course, then they're like, well, yeah, you aren't going to get hired on for summer. But I really wanted to do summer. And, so I didn't get rehired. So, that season ends, I don't know, I think winter season. When did winter season end? Probably March or April. And we head back down to Casper, and I go and I get a job. And we're living in a studio apartment. And, you know, just as time goes on, I get to the point where it just disgusts me. You know, I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want them to touch me. I don't, you know, how that happens after a while when you get really to a point where you have taken enough abuse. And truly, you know, as you look back on it, it's like, yeah, that was somebody who was in his, you know, mid-20s taking advantage of it. I had turned 20. I ended up breaking up with him, I believe, maybe 2 weeks before my 21st birthday. And I think I went and moved back home for a while, which that didn't last for too long. My dad and I were oil and water. Always. And, so, let's see, old Mule. What happened to him? He ended up buying the van off of me. And, I actually started working in a rock and roll bar. And, I changed jobs from that job that I initially had. And then when I turned 21, the bar was opening up. And so I went and applied there and was hired on as a waitress. And that started my year of the rock and roll extravaganza. I became an extremely wild child after that situation. And also, when I got into that environment, it was the first time I really actually ever felt pretty, or that I had an idea that I was you know, powerful, beautiful woman who, well, which I still, you know, I was still always that insecure, shy person. I just knew I could manipulate better, you know, after, not for long-term things. I went a little crazy that year at the rock and roll bar. But again, it was the first time I was ever really given any true attention. So that was an eye-opening thing for me. And old Mule would come and show up and stalk me, basically at the bar. And he'd creep out the other bartenders. And Eric's boyfriend was here today. Oh, really? What did he want? I don't know. He just stood around watching. Oh, nice. Okay. He would just stand there and he would watch me. He's a freak. Such a freak. So, I didn't hear from him for years until I was going off to Columbus College of Art and Design in Columbus, Ohio. Let's see, I must have met Sean. At that time I was working at Slocum's. I think I was 23 when I met Sean. So a couple of years had gone by. And I was leaving for college, for the school, and my mom, she's like, so, I just wanted to tell you that Mule's mother called. I'm like, well, when did she call? And she's like, a couple months ago. Like, okay, well, why didn't you tell me? She's like, well, I just didn't know whether to give you the message or not, because I just didn't know what they wanted. Yep, I mean, she didn't want me to get wrapped up back with them. I can understand that. And she's like, I know that you're leaving for the school, and I know that it's stressful for you, but you know, here's the number, and you do with it what you want. It was to his mom. And I'm like, okay. So I get out to Columbus, Ohio. I get settled in, and Sean was the guy who I ended up marrying for a very short time. That's a whole nother story. Ask me about Seanisms. Good God. And so I call his mom, and I found out that he had died, and he had gotten hit by a 18-wheeler. He was driving truck with his dad's company, the Swift, the trucking company. And, you know, Mule liked to ride his bicycle and think he was this, you know, big athletic guy, which he wasn't. And he got hit by an 18-wheeler coming out of the parking lot on his bicycle one day. And, you know, this guy had caused enough trauma in my life that, you know, I thanked his mom. And his mom was always very sweet. She was a sweet person, you know. But I was always, you know, you always kind of have that fear about certain people like that, especially abusive people like that, mental people who are that controlling and such, that it was actually really a relief to find out he was dead. True relief. And, you know, the song 18 Wheels and a Dozen Roses actually went through my head, and that was the only time I really was thankful to hear that somebody had passed away. 'Cause he was not a good guy. He was not a good guy. So that's the story of Samuel. What was his last name? What do we have coming off on here? We have stuff coming off. Okay, so we've got issues. Of course. Look at that crap. The knots. It's not good. And do I like this part? You guys can't see that very well. Do I like these tassels hanging off of here? I don't think that I do. Here I was saying, oh, you know, get nice expensive stuff, make it look right. I don't think it looks right. Although that's actually not nearly as bad that way. I swear that does not like to stick to that gaffer's tape. We need that guy there. So yeah, that was my first real relationship with a man. I had been such a good girl. I really had. But anyway, that's life. You know, at least I got out of the situation. At least I, you know, got split up with him and didn't spend continued time with him because he was really, truly bad news. So I don't know if these are really acting the way that I want them to act anyway. Another option that I had thought of was, what about a Brad? You know, I wanted to emulate the flag coming off of here. Crazy stories from the 90s. I guess I would have been, 91. 91. No. 89. 19. I turned 20 when I moved up there. And then, hard here. Oh, that's not good. Oh. You a-hole. Really? Pulling off my S. Still need to fix that. I need to go to bed, guys. Alright, well, that's been a long story. I'm going to finish this up in the morning, and then I'm going to start putting on the images. I might pull these off for now. I don't love them. I thought I would love them a lot more. I don't. That was an expenditure. Never know until you try, though. It was a good thought. Not saying it's a total no-go. I just don't love it. You know, it doesn't, if I didn't have it, it would fold better. Here, let me show you. My friends hated him. Oh my gosh. Because he was there that night before we went off to Arizona and introduced him to my friends, and they all hated him. Why do you hate him? Because he's arrogant POS? Oh yeah. Perfect. it going to be able to fold at all? I'm just going to have to work it. It's definitely adding another fat section to our book. We're not even to the big top yet. Oh my gosh. So I should have pushed this as far out as I could have. I wonder if it'll still come apart. Oh, don't break. Please don't break. Wouldn't have been able to do that for too much longer. Oh God. So we're driving down. I'm driving my van. And he's driving in front of me in his car. And it was a stick shift. And he's now I'm 20 years old. Raised with 4 brothers, and he's making signs out the window about what gear I should be in. He's holding, he'll put his hand out the window, and I'm following behind him, and we get to the next spot. You know, he's done it. He's doing it for miles. You know, so we get to our next gas stop or whatever, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, you know, I thought it was hard trying to figure out how to, you know, what gear to be in. Like, I don't have a problem figuring out what gear to have that vehicle in. Good God. Oh, he also dented the car. This was a classic one, right? I've gone to go and buy my first real vehicle. So we're going to go buy the van in Bozeman, Montana. And we go driving, and I had just collected just $600, you know, between my tips, and then I think I borrowed some money off of somebody to go get the last, you know, $50 to get up there. Buy this van, my first vehicle. And yeah, he's from Arizona. He doesn't know the country. And the first time I hit a deer on the road, I think I was 17 years old, so I'm pretty well aware that there are deer on the road, on these roads. You know, they're just everywhere. That's part of being a mountain girl, you know. And then you're traveling along water, which we were, and it's dark, that there's a good chance, this was up in summertime, we were up there. He's helping me get my car, my brand new car. He's following behind me. I'm driving his car in front. He's driving the new van. And he's riding me so hard. He's just right on my butt. And I'm like, why are you following so close? You know, I know that there's deer on this road. I know that there's a dang good chance that there's going to be one that pops out right in front of us. And it did. My brand new vehicle that didn't have a scratch on it now has a dent on it. And the passenger door never worked properly again. And, killed the front tail light and slammed into the back of his own car. Like, why were you following so close? Well, I was trying to get you to hurry up. I'm like, dude. Those things we do. Those things that we think are the right things to do. I continued to make mistakes like that throughout my life. I can't say that was the only time that I stayed with somebody who was controlling and overbearing, because I sure as heck did it again. And I stayed with someone who was completely apathetic for 4 years too. Which that would have been the time I probably would have, you know, been able to have a child. Actually, it was one in the middle was the worst. He was a bad, bad person. Ex-husband was a pretty crappy person, too. Be nice to find a good man. Had some crappy luck that way. Known some good guys, but you know, they're generally not interested in having an actual relationship, so that one folds well. It's a little better. Just trying to free up space in there. We'll get those other two tents in there and it'll be even worse than it is now. Okay, I'm going to put a book on this here, I think is going to be my best bet. Still wanting to come up a little bit. Let that dry. Alright guys, we're at an hour. I've been fighting this, so. See, the glue doesn't come up when there's not, when it's full. It's so strange. Mod Podge. New jar from Mod Podge. I don't know what that jar was from originally. Hot fudge maybe or something. Not my hot fudge. Okay guys, sleep well.